Hey everybody, my name is Joey and I wanted to share some specific details about what it looked like when I started to begin to realize that I was being gang stalked and that I had become a targeted individual, or at least that I became aware that I was a targeted individual. It is my hope to share and that this information will get to people who are just now waking up to this. So that they can kind of see what the similarities are, and so that it could prevent a possible suicide. Hopefully it'll also prevent somebody losing their mind and going insane and ending up in a mental institution. It's difficult for me as well because it started for me in 1995, and here we are in 2018, and so since all of this began, I have come to give my life to Jesus Christ, and I have closed a lot of doors on the things in my life. I've repented and I've renounced agreements that I've made with the enemy. So the most important thing for me right now is to just pray. So Father, I thank you, God, for your Son, and I thank you for waking me up and letting me see what was behind the veil. I thank you for calling me out of sin, God, and I just ask that with this, with me sharing this information with people, that I wouldn't open any doors to ones that we have worked so hard to close. In your name I pray, amen. So, okay, here we go. 1995, summer of 1995. The first thing I started to recognize was my mom was going to Mexico to see a friend of ours that lived in Mexico, and I was taking her to the airport, and I noticed that there was a lot of traffic on the highway, more so than would be during that afternoon. You would think during an afternoon, but not only was there heavy traffic, but everybody had their high beams on. Everyone's brights were on. So I started to call. That was the first time I noticed. That was the first thing that I noticed was the incredible amount of traffic as well as the high beams being on. And I thought to myself, the light people have come to town. And that was the first thing that I noticed. Not only did I see it though, but the things that I started to see, there was a feeling that went along with what I saw that was something that I couldn't put my finger on what this feeling was. It was if it was every car on that highway was for me. They were all looking at me. It was this heightened sense of all eyes upon you. And I didn't get it. I didn't understand what that feeling was about. I went and dropped my mom off at the airport, but before I waited with her at her gate for her to get on the airplane, and there was 3 people that came and sat behind me at this airport. Again, this is in like August of 1995, and they were having a conversation amongst themselves, and I wasn't really paying attention to what they were saying. I was just looking through a magazine, and my mom was checking her gate time or whatever. But then, I don't know, for some reason, I noticed that the woman said, well, we can't let anyone in if they're just here to cause trouble. And it appeared to be that they were having a conversation regarding me. And I don't know what they were talking, at that time, I don't know what they were talking about letting me into, but it became quite clear that they were having a conversation about me. And I've understood recently, I guess, it's called directed conversation. That was something that I experienced a great deal of. I would go into a quick trip. I would go to the laundromat, and people would come, and either they're getting coffee or they were doing laundry, and they would start to have a conversation right next to me after I was already there. And they would have a conversation, and they would use the exact same words that I had been thinking about, or that the exact same words that I had talked to on the phone with my mom about, or had a conversation with somebody else in my home. They would mock and mimic the conversation I just had. Not only the conversation, but they would also talk about the thoughts I had. And again, it wasn't just the conversation and just these people, my awareness, but it was a feeling. It was a knowing that they were there for me at that time. I also had an incredible experience with my television set. For 20 years, I have tried to talk to my mom. I have tried to talk to maybe one or two other people about what had happened. But with the television set, I can tell you that it was the Kansas City Chiefs preseason football game in Mexico City. And the three commentators, Frank Gifford, Al Deerdorf, and somebody else, were doing the hosting of that preseason game. And I was sitting in my home, and I had said something like, they had sombreros on. They were wearing sombreros, and they were kind of goofing around before the game started. And I was like, those are great hats. Just kind of said that out loud. I was by myself. And they responded to me. They were like, well, if you don't like our hats, then why don't you get a hat of your own? And I was like, really? Is this really happening? Oh, yeah, this is really happening. So that began to happen. And there's a movie I just saw recently, the clip of, called The Game, a 1997 Michael Douglas film, where the scene in that movie is exactly what happened to me as far as interactive television. Another time, there was a news on the 6 o'clock evening news, like Fox 4 News. That's a local news station here. But they would talk about going to see the technological advances that have been made for cyber education television. They were telling me that what I was going through and what I was seeing was I was being educated. And they called it cyber ed. She gave me the address of a place, and I left. It was a Saturday afternoon. And I went to the place, and it was actually a middle school, and it was out for the summer. This is, again, summer of 1995. And I pulled up, and there was a big 18-wheeler that had the fanciest paint job I've ever seen on it. And it had cyber ed on the trailer of the semi-truck. I got out of my car, and I went, and there was a guy with a suit on. There were several guys with suits on, and like the glasses, the FBI glasses, or sunglasses on, and this entire truck had been transformed into a giant command post. There was a big screen TV. Actually, it was a computer monitor, and there was workstations that were set up inside this. And basically, it was introducing the way that they were portraying this was that, they had made great advances in like the healthcare system, where a doctor in Switzerland could actually help a doctor here in the United States perform a surgery through this real-time television, so that the screen, they could actually see what was going on and talk and communicate. I became made aware at that time about the television situation, which televisions are nothing more than a computer monitor. And the computer monitor is actually a camera. They can hear everything you're saying. They can see everything you're saying, even if your TV is turned off. Even if it is unplugged. They were hooking up to my phone lines outside with an ISDN cable of some sort. And so it was through the phone line outside that they were able to monitor everything I did. And people talk about cameras and all of this in their home. Well, regardless of where you go and what you do, if you have a TV in your house, if you have a monitor in your house, if you carry a cell phone, they can turn on your TV, your monitor, your phone. They can turn it on even if you have it off, and they can hear what you're saying. They can get audio, and they can get visual. So it was at that time that I realized that I had caught the attention of somebody. And not only had I caught the attention of somebody, but they were following me around. It made me feel special. It made me feel, I can't even explain to you the feeling. that I had. I feel it very important to also say at this time that that was also the year that I went through a divorce. And during this divorce, I started to use drugs, specifically methamphetamine. So I had just kind of stumbled into the world of speed, and that's just a whole nother video. But I opened up doors even wider than what they were already open because of generational curses in my family and the witchcraft and everything that my family was involved with, or part of my family was involved with. So I opened up the doors wide open, the free will thing, and I was using drugs. But I also knew that this isn't something that I wanted to do, so I was reaching out for help. So I didn't know if the feds were watching me. At first, that's what I thought. I thought it was, the cops. There would be low-flying aircraft. There was, the typical, you hear about the break-ins. People had broken into my home, and I wouldn't say that they're criminals had, but somebody had broken in my home, and they had left, like, light bulbs around. And basically, they had bugged my home, or led me to believe they had bugged my home so they could hear what was going on through these light bulbs. And I remember one day kind of having a meltdown and unscrewing the light bulbs and taking them outside and smashing them on the ground. And it wasn't 30 seconds later that a helicopter flew so low over my house that you thought that it was going to crash into my house. So it was obvious I was under surveillance. It was obvious that I had caught these people's attention. But what was even more obvious was that this was, as time went on, and I mean, it was quickly, because I got hit hard. As I got hit, with this realization that I was being stalked. I was being under surveillance. People were listening to what I was saying. They would move my vehicle at night. I would come out in the morning and my vehicle would be just a little bit, just like had been moved, and it was just in a little bit of a different position. It was the whole psychological thing. But I realized, I wasn't like dealing drugs. I wasn't a drug dealer. I wasn't in a big time. There was nothing about the drug world that would have put me in a position where I got the attention of any, like the DEA or anything like that, or even local police officers. I wasn't a dealer. I just started using a little bit. But, and there was a conversation I had with my ex-husband, who is now and has been since in a mental institution. What he witnessed and what he saw during this 3-month awakening, or the initial attack in 1995, has ended him up in a mental institution where he's been even to this day. And he was like mid-20s. So anyway, we had this conversation in my car, and we were talking about, cool cars and what kind of car, if you had all the money in the world, or you could get any kind of car you wanted, what would you get? And I remember specifically him saying, he would get this yellow Corvette with a fin on the back and tinted windows and spinners for the tires, and just a very specific car. And by the time we got, I would say, 2 miles up the road at a stoplight, you'd look over in the parking lot, and it would be like a Quick Trip parking lot or whatever, and the exact car that he described was sitting there for sale. There was another time when we were driving within that same week, very close, and I had a little convertible at the time, and I was driving, and he was kind of leaning back, and he had his foot up, and the top was down. He had his foot up, wedged between the rear view mirror, and he was in the passenger side. And I said, you really should need to put your seatbelt on. And he said, what, are you worried that my foot's going to take out that stop sign? And I laughed it off, and I said, no, I'm not really. No, why would you say that? It's kind of crazy. No, I'm not worried about that. Well, he put his seatbelt on, and it was maybe within a half a mile we got pulled over by a police car. And he came up to he said, he said, a license and registration. I gave him license and registration, and he went back, ran my name, and came back to the car. And he said, everything's fine, Miss Forbes. Just want to let you know, though, that your passenger might want to bring his foot back inside the car because he almost took out that stop sign back there. The exact words that Kyle had just said to me. So it was a 3-month long initial process of specific things like this happening, I also had visitors come to my house, people I had just met, in the drug world, and they would try to tell me intimidating parable stories about, people that, I was used to wear Looney Tune cartoon t-shirts, and I was very, very naive to everything, and I was just, kind of like in the Matrix, had no idea about anything, but all of a sudden once this started happening to me, I switched everything to wearing no fear. I was trying to make a statement, even then, that I was not afraid, nor would I be intimidated. Even though I was gripped with fear. I was paralyzed with fear. At the same time, it was just, I felt like a superstar with paparazzi following me around, helicopters, and, it was just kind of exhilarating. It was just kind of like, this is incredible. My TV's talking to me. They're listening to everything I say. I want to leave and go out, just go for a drive and see what else they want to come up with. What else? Because I was starting to try to figure out who they were. And I quit doing drugs instantly. At that moment, I did go back to doing drugs, and I've struggled with addiction in my life, but I have recently, I've gotten a lot of victory in that area as well, and I am working a recovery program now, and I am clean and sober and have been for some time. But so I started going down this dark path. I wasn't raised in the church. I never had a Bible in my hand except maybe one time in a hotel room, and I opened it up to Psalm 91. So I had no idea, but when I started seeing billboards that seemed to be speaking to me exactly the thoughts that I was having, or they were answering, I was like, what is going on here? And it would just like, we're repeating ourselves. I'm like, what are they saying? So it was just, I started to study signs and symbols. And that, in the place that I never thought about the Bible, I never thought about that it was God getting my attention. At the same time, it wasn't just God getting my attention, but the doors to the demonic realm were wide open, and there was definitely a tug of war going on, or a brutal match going on in the unseen realm for me. But ultimately, the goal was, and still is, to get people to commit suicide, or to end up in a mental institution, or just end up using drugs and alcohol to kind of mask the craziness and the pain and the rejection and the isolation and all of these things, so that you end up overdosing. And anyway, I wanted, I've turned into a couple of other channels recently, and I'm really blessed to be part of this community of people who are raising awareness. I was homeless for 17 years. I couldn't get my footing when I fell down this hole, the rabbit hole, so to speak. Everything I ever tried to do, I couldn't hold a job anymore, and I always had a job. My children have been gone, taken from me over and over again. I was in the military for a while, and it was intense there, but I just wanted to kind of share some more of what happened specifically in the early days of this. And this is, like I said, in 1995, in my awakening. And I wanted to just kind of try to remember what it was like when God first woke me up. The good news is that now I know, at the same time that the enemy, Satan, was attacking me, and all of the things that serve him, God broke in. God broke in, and I heard words like royalty, inheritance, chosen. So it was just, those are words that still ring true to me today. So anyway, again, those are pretty much, that's the highlighted, that's what I can remember, the intensity when I first woke up, what I went through. And there's much more to it, but I did just want to make another video and get this out there, because it's so important that, as there has to be other people really waking up and going through this, that I wanted to share this with them in case that's what they're going through. I've also relied heavily on the gift of discernment because I know that there's a lot of mocking spirits out there that try to mock us and our testimonies and what they do. They'll try and look like us. They'll dress like us. It's almost like a doppelganger, so to speak, or something like that, because the idea is to try to discredit what we have to say so that, people like, those targeted individuals are paranoid. They're having a mass paranoia. It's not true. Basically what it is we are chosen by God. Everyone's different, yes. At the same time, as this more is being revealed to me, I'm here today to serve God's will and God's purpose and his plan for me and to pray for humanity. Because we definitely, as a species of human beings created by God in his image, are under attack. And I feel like a mass level of extinction plan is been put into effect by the enemy to take out the human species, the human race. But, God is good. He won that war a long time ago. It is finished. It is written that, the victory is Jesus's. So anyway, I just wanted to kind of share this, and hopefully I can get in touch with a couple of you that I've been watching and can learn a great deal from. And thank you for your courage, and thank you for the live feeds that you guys have. I'm praying for everybody. Have a good day.